The water element is dealing with our very beginnings, because the water element, according to Chinese medicine, is the prenatal time. We were all in water somewhere is between 6 to 9 months usually, and then we're born, we explore, we're teenagers, we are caretakers, again, whether you give birth or whether you're a teacher or an auntie or an uncle, and then finally you come into your middle age, so this is somewhere between 45, of course nobody wants to admit that, right, 45 through 69, and then at 70 you return to water, so this is a cycle. So at 70 you become a sage, hopefully, or a teacher, and a mentor to others, and this is, and going to the African tradition, Meldoma Somé says that the infant is closest to the grandparents because they've just come from spirit, and the ones that are 70 and above are returning to spirit soon. And so they have an understanding of spirit and a kinship with each other that is beyond words. I speak of Meldoma. He was one of my teachers, and he's a medicine man from West Africa, and he wrote the book called Water and Spirit. Water and Spirit had to do with his initiation into his tribe again. When he was just 4 or 5 years old, he was kidnapped by the Jesuits and separated from his tribe. This was as recent. Meldoma is younger than I am. Meldoma is, I believe, 54, somewhere around that. I'm 56. This happened so less than 50 years ago. So if you think that persecution and racism and using religion is not being done by Western society, think again. So, and this was common. Many of the boys especially were taken to the Jesuits, and then the idea was that they would be indoctrinated into the religion, and this was the French Jesuits. So he was not allowed to speak Dagara, he could only speak French. And then after that, it wasn't until he was about 21 years old and had suffered many indignities and outright abuse, including sexual abuse at the hands of the priests. And at 21, he lost it. And he shoved a priest. And now, for speaking the language, for speaking Dagara, he had to wear a goat head and wasn't allowed to remove the goat head until he found another person speaking the African language. So it was really a way of controlling people and then getting them to work against each other, because that was the only way to get the goat head off of you. So this was a lot of abuse to go through. But partly, his grandfather, even when he was in his mother's womb back in the water, called him brother, because in their belief system they believed that he was the brother that was being reincarnated. And they listened, the elders in the tribe listened to see what his name would be, and so they named him Meldoma because it meant a friend to the enemy. And so they foretold that when he would come into his teaching position, he would teach the white people about the African system and about their particular way of healing and even their spirituality. And so he had to go through this because he was able to learn French. He graduated from Brandeis University. So he's very, very astute. And if you like writing, he is one of the best writers I've ever read. His language, his facility for language is incredible. Water and Spirit speaks about this aspect of water. And I should say that by the time he went through his initiation at 21, he was much older than the rest of the people in the village. But he had found his way back through instinct. After he had shoved the priest, he thought, if they put a goat head around me for speaking the language, what on earth are they going to do to me if I shove a priest? So he ran away. And he was several hours and remember, he'd been gone for about 15 years from his village. And he had even forgotten how to speak Dagara. It had vanished from his vocabulary. But in spite of the fact that he had become civilized, so he had no training in the wild, but somehow he was able to make it back, just foraging and things like that, things that he never really had done in the last 15 years. And so when he made it back, he looked up, because he fell down exhausted, he looked up and his sister, who he hadn't seen for so many years, spoke in Dagara to him, and he didn't know what she was saying. And she was calling him by his name. So the elders felt, and the elders in their tribe again were talking about the sages. So the elders have a council there, and they said, what are we going to do? He's so out of his element, so to speak. He's back in this hunting society. He doesn't know how to hunt. He doesn't know anything. Because when you're 5, you just hang out with the grandparents and listen to stories. You're not involved in the taking care of people or the tribe. So they decided, well, he's going to have to go through the traditional initiation. Now, even the young ones who go through it at about 13 or 14, several of them don't survive because there's wild animals out there. And it's a much harsher environment. So if you happen to go through Vision Quest here, and like I went through at College of DuPage has a vested interest in you not getting eaten